Alone, Ryder arrives at a ghost town, a forgotten place where only the wind whispers secrets. He buys it for a handful of coins, but soon discovers he's not the only one who wants it. What he thought was an abandoned town is actually a prize, and a secret worth killing for is hidden beneath the dust. Here's how his gamble for a new life began. Liam Caldwell, a weary wanderer with a sarcastic sense of humor, rode his old but reliable horse into the abandoned town of Sunrock. The sun was high in the sky, heating the air and turning the dust into a shimmering haze that danced over the scorched earth. This place was nothing more than a couple of dilapidated buildings, a former saloon, a general store, a few shacks, and a stable, barely holding on with its rotting timbers. On the only remaining wall hung a faded wooden sign that read, Sunrock. It dangled from a single rusty nail, swaying in the wind like an old man about to fall over. Liam dismounted, adjusted his hat that shielded his face from the blazing rays, and slowly looked around. A strange smirk appeared on his face, for he saw not ruins, but something more. In his eyes, this place was a blank canvas on which he could paint a new life. A few weeks later, Liam was sitting in the dusty saloon of the neighboring town, Blackwater, sipping cheap whiskey and listening to the taunts of the local cowboys. "Sunrock? You bought Sunrock, boy?" One of them laughed, a big man with a long mustache. "Only coyotes live there, and they ran away from the boredom a long time ago." Another chimed in. "Why do you want that dead town? Want to be the king of ghosts? They say nobody comes back from there alive?" Liam, without looking up from his glass, calmly replied that he preferred silence and solitude to a noisy crowd, and that this town would become the most peaceful place in the entire West. His words provoked a new wave of laughter. Liam simply shrugged, let them laugh. He was used to being considered an oddball. He had paid next to nothing for the town, and even if it didn't work out, he wouldn't lose anything. All he needed was a little patience, hard work, and maybe a few lucky cards. He bought provisions, tools, and other necessary items from a local merchant, loading everything onto his horse and a small wagon. As a parting word, the merchant, an old gray-haired man, quietly told him, "Be careful, boy. People have been hunting for this land for a long time." Liam just waved it off, saying no one would bother him in the desert, and headed back to his new home. On the way, he thought about how foolish this all was. He was just a regular drifter, and now he was the owner of an entire ghost town. It was strange, but at the same time, Liam felt something new in himself, a certain purpose, however absurd. He smiled to himself, remembering how easy it was to make the deal. Buying the town for next to nothing from some drunkard who seemed happy to get rid of the dead property, Liam was looking forward to fixing everything up. After all, he was in no hurry, and this place was perfect for his unhurried plan. The first night in Sunrock passed with a surprising quietness, save for the howling wind that swept through the empty buildings. Liam woke up with the first rays of sun, feeling an unaccustomed sense of peace. Over a breakfast of cold beans and a tough tortilla, he thought about his plans. He needed to restore several structures, fortify the saloon's roof, and clear the old hotel of debris. There was a lot of work to be done, but Liam wasn't afraid of a little hard labor. Around noon, he rode towards a nearby canyon to find some suitable lumber for construction. This took several hours. After loading a few logs onto the wagon, he was about to head back when he suddenly noticed tracks in the sand. They were fresh, from boots that clearly belonged to a person. This put him on high alert. He knew that, by all accounts, there was nobody for hundreds of miles in these parts. Liam looked around, gripping the handle of his pistol tightly, but saw nothing except the blazing sun and rocky cliffs. Smiling to himself, he muttered, "Well, if there's someone here, they definitely don't want me to find them." After returning to Sunrock, he unloaded the logs and started working. In the evening, as he was sitting by the campfire eating his meager dinner, he heard a sound again. This time, it was clearer. Something creaked in the stable. Liam grabbed his Winchester and moved silently toward the building. He cautiously opened the door and peeked inside. It was empty, but on the dirt floor he saw fresh boot tracks again. They led to the far wall, where there used to be an entrance to a small cellar. Liam quickly went down there and realized that someone had been there very recently. He returned to the campfire, sat back down, and, looking into the flames, thought, "Well, at least I won't go crazy from loneliness. Now, I have ghost neighbors." He was joking, but deep down he felt a sense of unease. These tracks were real, not a figment of his imagination. Someone was constantly watching him. He suddenly remembered the old merchant's words. There was more truth to them than he had realized. Maybe buying this town wasn't such a good idea after all. But to leave? No. That would be too easy, and Liam wasn't one to give up. He decided that if he was destined to be killed, it should happen in his own town, which he had only just begun to restore. At least that way, he'd know he died for a purpose. He took his Winchester, checked the cartridges, and placed it next to him, preparing for the next night to not be so quiet. The tension of the second night was palpable. Instead of sleeping in the old saloon, Liam decided to set up camp right by the fire under the open sky, with his Winchester close at hand. He was on the verge of dozing off when his ears caught a faint rustling. He froze. The rustling repeated, this time closer, coming from the direction of the abandoned hotel. Liam slowly raised his Winchester, listening intently to every sound, trying to figure out what it was. The tension mounted. Suddenly, a figure emerged from around the corner of the hotel, and the barrel of a pistol glinted in the firelight, aimed directly at him. "Don't move, or I'll blow your head off," a sharp, feminine voice commanded. This caught Liam by surprise. He hadn't expected his uninvited guest to be a woman. He raised his hands, holding them open to show he had no intention of resisting. Liam couldn't make out her face in the darkness, but he could feel her studying him intently. Instead of being frightened, he decided this was the perfect moment for his signature sarcasm. "You know, people usually prefer to meet during the day, not like this with a gun in hand. It kind of ruins the first impression," he said calmly. He heard her scoff. "Get out of here, stranger. This town isn't for brave guys like you." Her voice was firm and held no hint of a joke. "Too many people have already died here trying to find something that doesn't belong to them." Liam slowly lowered his hands, seeing that she wasn't in a hurry to shoot. "I seem to be the new owner here, so I guess this town is mine after all, and I'm enjoying my new peaceful surroundings." This remark, instead of scaring her off, only angered her more. "You don't understand anything, you idiot. You have to leave, or you'll meet the same fate as everyone who came here." Liam, seeing her annoyance, decided to add more fuel to the fire. "Well, if it's so dangerous here, why don't you tell me everything over a glass of whiskey? I can get some if you're interested." Liam wanted to diffuse the tension, but his sarcasm had the opposite effect. The woman, squinting, took a step forward and her face became more visible in the firelight. Her eyes gleamed, revealing a certain old pain. "Don't think your jokes will save you. Leave while you still can." But Liam had already made his decision. He was too stubborn to just pack up and go. "I'm afraid you'll have to come up with something better. I'm not leaving, and especially not because some ghost in the dark told me to." With those words, he heard her take a deep breath, and for a moment, silence hung in the air before she slowly lowered her pistol, apparently realizing that she wouldn't get rid of this stubborn cowboy so easily. The woman, having finally lowered her pistol, sat down on a fallen log across from the fire. Seeing this, Liam decided she wasn't so crazy after all, since she agreed to talk. He took out a bottle of whiskey, poured some into 2 metal mugs, and offered her one. She took it, never taking her eyes off his face, as if trying to understand who he really was. "My name is Raina," she said, taking a small sip. "And you, Liam, should get out of here as soon as possible." Liam just smirked. "I told you already, I'm not the type to just give up." He was waiting for an explanation, and she, after a moment of silence, began to speak. "This town wasn't abandoned for no reason. There's old silver hidden deep in the ground here. A lot of silver." Liam's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly composed himself. "And how much of it is there?" he asked, already assuming it was just some tall tale. Raina looked at him seriously and replied that, according to rumors, there was enough to make someone rich for several lifetimes. "Many people know about this treasure, but no one has been able to get it. Bandits, prospectors, adventurers, they all came here and either died or fled in a panic. This town is a death trap." She explained that one of the most ruthless gangs in the area, led by a man named Kane, was hunting for this silver. "He's merciless, Liam. He won't stop at anything to get this treasure, and your purchase of the town has only brought you to his attention. You're in his way now." Listening to her, Liam realized that his naive plan to build a quiet life here had collapsed in an instant. He thought he was buying silence and peace, but what he had actually bought was mortal danger. He sat by the fire, looking into the flames, and thoughts raced through his mind. On one hand, he could simply leave and forget about it. On the other, his stubborn nature wouldn't allow him to back down. He looked at Raina, who was waiting for his decision. "So, you're saying I'm sitting on a pile of silver now?" he asked, and there was no sarcasm in his voice anymore, but something else, a sense of excitement. "Either I can leave or I can take it for myself and start a new life." Raina shook her head. "It's not that simple. They'll come for it, and they'll kill you." Liam stood up, adjusted his hat, and smirked, looking at the dark silhouettes of the buildings. "Well then, let's try playing the owner. I don't know what I like more, the silver or the idea, but I'm not leaving. Let them come. I was looking for adventure, and it seems it has found me." Raina stared at him, stunned, not believing her ears. This man, who seemed like an ordinary drifter, was ready to stand up to the most dangerous gang in the area for the sake of an old town and its secret. "You're a madman," she whispered. "Maybe," Liam replied, "but at least it's my madness. So, Raina, will you help me? It seems we have a common enemy now." The following day's dawn brought a brief calm. Liam and Raina spent the rest of the night discussing a plan of action. Though Raina didn't trust this stubborn stranger, she saw something in him that others lacked. He wasn't greedy. He didn't want silver. He just wanted a place of his own. Soon, when the sun was high in the sky, 3 figures appeared on the horizon. They were approaching the town, and their appearance didn't bode well. They were armed mercenaries, and by their demeanor, they were here on Kane's orders. Liam and Raina hid behind the walls of the old hotel, watching them approach. One of them, a big man with a crooked nose, dismounted and shouted loudly, "Hey, you, whoever's there, we know you're here. Get out while you still can." Without hesitation, Liam stepped from around the corner, his hands in plain sight. "Well, that's not the most polite way to introduce yourselves," he said with a smirk. "I'm the new owner here, and I don't think you have the right to tell me what to do." The man pulled out his pistol. "I'm telling you one last time. Get out," he roared. Liam just shrugged. "And I wasn't planning on it. Want to try?" That was the last straw. The mercenary fired, but Liam managed to duck back behind the wall in time. The bullet whistled past. At the same moment, another shot rang out, but it wasn't his. From the ruins of the old store where Raina was hiding, a bullet flew out and hit the attacker in the shoulder. He howled in pain. A gunfight ensued. The mercenaries started shooting at the building, and Liam, peeking out from behind cover, returned fire. One of the mercenaries tried to flank the hotel, but Raina, anticipating his move, took another precise shot. He went down. The last of them, seeing that things were going poorly, hurried to retreat. Raina came out from cover and inspected the wounded man who was groaning on the ground. "He won't die," she said, "but he won't be a threat to anyone anymore." Liam walked up to her, and that same smirk reappeared on his face. "Well, I have to admit, you're a pretty good shot. Looks like we're starting to work well together." Raina just scoffed, but in her eyes there was a newfound respect for this strange cowboy. This fight, though short, became the beginning of their strange but necessary alliance. Following the short but heated gunfight, Liam and Raina realized they needed help. They couldn't face an entire gang alone, so they decided to travel to Blackwater for supplies and potentially new allies. In the dusty saloon of that town where Liam had been before, they came across 2 interesting characters. The first, Jack Harper, was a former gambler. He was sitting at a table, nervously shuffling cards, a look of hopeless despondency on his face. "Tough streak," he muttered, looking at his empty hand. "Seems my luck has run out for good." Sitting next to him was Dr. Mason, an old, gray-haired physician with kind eyes and an obvious love for drinking. "Don't worry, Jack," he said, pouring himself some whiskey. "Sometimes to start a new life, you first have to lose everything." Liam and Raina, overhearing their conversation, exchanged glances. It was the perfect combination. Liam walked up to them, placed a bottle of whiskey on the table, and sat down. "I heard things aren't going so well for you," he said. "I have an offer that might change everything." He told them about Sunrock, the silver, and the gang that was after them. At first, Jack and Mason thought he was crazy. However, Liam was very convincing. He told them about his dream of turning the dead town into a lively place. "This isn't just a fight for treasure," he explained. "It's a chance to start over. A chance for you, for me, for this town." Dr. Mason thought for a moment and then nodded. "You know, I'm an old man, and I'm tired of treating drunks. I think I should be a part of a real drama." Jack Harper, looking at the whiskey bottle and the excitement in Liam's eyes, also made his decision. "All right, I'm in. You seem to know a thing or two about adventures. Maybe this is my last card, and it'll be a winning one." With that comical but sincere note, they all left the saloon together, feeling something new being born. Not just an alliance, but a real friendship. Kane, the gang leader, sat in his camp, furiously throwing knives at an old wooden board. He had just received a report from his only surviving mercenary, who had returned to camp in shame. They killed 2 of them. "It was some madman," the wounded man gasped. Kane, a massive and brutal man with a milky eye, roughly pulled a knife from the board and turned to him. "Madman. Nobody calls my men mad, and they especially don't kill them," he roared. "What did you say?" Some new owner showed up in town. The mercenary, terrified of his anger, quickly told him everything he knew. Kane listened, clenching his fists. The news that some rookie cowboy was trying to revive Sunrock and had already put up a fight enraged Kane. He was obsessed with the idea of taking the silver that was rumored to be there. He had killed dozens of men to keep this secret, and he wasn't about to let some upstart get in his way. "Gather everyone," he ordered his men. "We're going to Sunrock, and this time we're not playing games. We're going to wipe that town off the face of the earth along with everyone in it." He knew that this new owner wouldn't be able to resist for long, but his stubbornness had struck a nerve with Kane. This was personal. While Kane's gang was preparing their horses and weapons, Liam, Raina, Jack, and Mason were on their way back to Sunrock. The mood was upbeat, but Liam, as was his custom, decided to lighten the mood with a joke. "Well, boys, can you feel history being made right now?" he asked with a smirk. "I think after tonight I'll have to write a will. At least I'll be doing it not for myself, but for our new town. I think it's worth the risk." Jack nervously adjusted his hat, and Raina just rolled her eyes. But Dr. Mason, smiling, said, "You know, boy, I like you. Maybe it is madness, but at least it will be a fun story." They all understood that a storm was approaching, and although they were laughing, they were ready for it. Night fell upon Sunrock, bringing with it a chill and an ominous silence. Liam and his new allies were busy with preparations. They were fortifying old doors and windows, building barricades from logs and old crates. Each of them understood the seriousness of the situation, and each worked without a word. Jack Harper, the former gambler, was surprisingly adept at setting up traps, where his card-shuffling skills came in handy. Dr. Mason, despite his age, was hauling heavy rocks to reinforce the walls. The atmosphere was tense. They were ready for a fight, but no one knew what awaited them. While the men worked, Raina sat on the saloon's roof, watching the horizon. Liam walked up to her and sat down. "It seems you know more about this town than you let on," he remarked. "Why did you stay here? You could have left." Raina looked at him, and a flicker of sadness passed through her eyes. "My father was one of those who found this silver. He wanted to change our lives, but Kane killed him. I stayed to get revenge, and to make sure no one else dies." A silence hung between them, filled with understanding and unspoken feelings. Liam, not knowing what to say, offered her his hand. She took it, and in that moment, something new sparked between them, something more than just an alliance. Liam's joke broke the silence. "You know, I've wandered my whole life looking for my place, and I only found it here, in a dead town, at the end of the earth, with a bunch of madmen who want to kill us. Well, that's definitely better than sitting in an empty house." Raina smiled. "You're incorrigible," she whispered. "And don't tell me that after tonight I'll have to write a will." Liam, with a serious face, replied, "I've already written mine. The most important thing is not to forget to state that our town should be called New Sunrock. I want it to sound dignified." The tension eased slightly, but they both knew that this night would be decisive. They sat there until they heard a sound that made them freeze. The noise was approaching, it was distinct, and now they knew their enemy was near. The silence of the night was shattered by the thunder of hooves. Kane's gang, like a black wave, poured into Sunrock. They rode with their weapons drawn, shooting into the air and shouting loudly, trying to intimidate their opponents. But the town they considered dead met them not with cries of panic, but with return fire. Liam, Raina, Jack, and Mason were waiting for them. From the very first volley, it was clear that the fight would be serious. Liam and Raina, shielded by barricades, fired with precision, not allowing the bandits to enter the center of town. Jack Harper, who was just recently sitting in a saloon complaining about bad luck, showed unexpected bravery. He hid in the old stable and, using his traps set up all around the perimeter, confused the attackers. One of the bandits, stepping on a hidden board with nails, fell with a scream, and another tripped over a taut rope. Dr. Mason, despite his advanced age, didn't stand by. He was in a building across the street supporting Liam and Raina, and when one of the bandits was about to shoot Liam, Mason made a precise shot, hitting the attacker in the arm. This saved Liam's life. The gunfight was fierce. The sounds of shots and shouts blended into one continuous roar, but Liam and his team held their ground. They used every trick, every wall, every crate to fight them off. In the heat of the battle, Kane, seeing that his men couldn't handle it, decided to take matters into his own hands. He broke through the barricades on his horse and ended up right in front of Liam. "Well, you arrogant fool," he roared. "I'll personally show you how to deal with dead towns." He aimed his revolver at Liam, and they both understood that the decisive moment had arrived. Time seemed to slow down. Liam and Kane stood facing each other in the middle of the dusty street, with the battle raging around them. The bandits, seeing their leader enter the fray, stopped shooting to avoid hitting him. Raina, Jack, and Mason also froze, watching this decisive moment. The tension was unbearable. "You made a big mistake coming here," Kane roared, his face contorted with fury. "This is my town, and you'll pay for daring to challenge me." Liam, instead of being afraid, just smirked. "You know, I thought duels were supposed to be more formal. Maybe we should have a whiskey first, or at least talk about the weather." His sarcasm, as always, was his main weapon. This drove Kane into a frenzy. "Shut your mouth!" he yelled, his hand twitching towards his revolver. Liam, seeing this, made a decision in the same second. He took a step back, dropping his hat, which distracted Kane for just a moment. That was all he needed. Liam wasn't the fastest shot, but he was cunning. While Kane was distracted by the hat, Liam drew his own revolver, hidden behind his belt, and fired. Not at his head, as anyone else would have done, but at his hand, where he was holding his weapon. Kane howled in pain, dropping his revolver. Liam's second shot hit him in the leg, and Kane collapsed to the ground. The remaining bandits, seeing their leader on the ground, lost their fighting spirit. They threw down their weapons and began to flee, leaving their wounded leader in the dust. Liam walked up to Kane, crouched beside him, and looking into his eyes said, "I told you, I'm not the type to just give up." With the last rays of the sun the next day, Sunrock began to come alive. After the victory over Kane and his gang, the air in the town seemed to be cleared of dust and fear. Liam, Raina, Jack, and Mason, though tired, were proud as they stood in the middle of the street, watching the last remnants of the gang leave their land. Liam looked at Raina with a smirk. "Well, I guess now we can get to what I came here for in the first place," he said, "to rebuild our town." And they got to work. News of the victory quickly spread throughout the area, and to their surprise, people from neighboring settlements began to come to Sunrock. They brought food, tools, and, most importantly, their hands, offering help. "We heard you chased off some crazy bandit," said one of them, an elderly carpenter. "We want to help you build a new town, a place where it's safe." Liam, standing in the middle of the crowd, couldn't hide his surprise. His lone adventure, it seemed, had turned into a community effort. Jack Harper, who had recently considered himself a complete loser, now, with his head held high, was overseeing the construction. Dr. Mason, with his wisdom and experience, became an advisor, and Raina, who had once held a gun to Liam's head, now stood beside him, helping to draw up plans for the new town. Something more than just friendship had blossomed between them. "Well, accidental mayor?" she teased Liam. "I guess now you'll have to hold official meetings and solve citizens' problems?" Liam just laughed. "It's definitely better than fighting off bandits, but I'll manage. After all, I have my loyal helpers now." With every new nail hammered into the old wood, and with every new smile on people's faces, Sunrock was coming more and more to life, and Liam realized that he had found not only a place here, but also a purpose. A great deal of time had passed. The dusty, dead Sunrock had been transformed into a lively and prosperous town. The old saloon was restored, and it was no longer empty, but filled with laughter and conversation. The old hotel, once a hideout from bandits, now welcomed new residents and travelers. Liam Caldwell, who had once ridden in here alone, was now at the center of it all. He sat on the porch of his home, the former saloon, and watched children play in the street that Kane's gang had recently trampled. He finally felt that he had found a place he could call home. Raina, now his partner, sat next to him, holding his hand. She was no longer a sullen ghost of the past, but had become the mistress of the new life they had built together. She often smiled, and her eyes, once filled with pain, now shone with happiness. Jack Harper, the former loser, had started his own business, and now ran the most successful store in town. His luck had returned, and he often said that Liam was his lucky card. Dr. Mason, to everyone's surprise, had finally found his place, creating the best clinic in the Wild West. He no longer drank or complained because he finally had a purpose. Liam looked at the town he had built with a smirk. He thought about how it all started with a simple desire for peace and quiet, and it ended with him finding not only silence, but also adventure, friendship, and love. "Well," he muttered to himself, "not bad for a guy who just wanted some peace and quiet." Raina, hearing him, just squeezed his hand tighter. She knew he had found more than just quiet here. He had found a new life, and with it, a new family, and that was the most valuable treasure of all that could be found in Sunrock.